at the very least, it's the conversation with your child about trying to find out what is going on any given day.
When the odds are beating you, keep your head up. Just keep on following your line if it's genuine.
Emotionally based school avoidance is the big one for it, EBSA. Again, this is an absolute, very much depends on your children. At the very least, it's the conversation with your child about trying to find out what is going on any given day. So my son had days they didn't want to go in because it was a certain maths teacher, or there was something going on, or there was something that was going to be out of routine and they were already finding that hard. One thing I almost had to teach his secondary school was that actually it's okay to treat each hour as kind of a ladder, that we can just do a little bit by a little bit. And with my son, it did get down to the point, his attendance was 27% at its worst. And it was enough for me to spend 4 hours in the morning to get him to the school and sit in the school car park and then go home. And he was utterly exhausted by the end of that, because the mental gymnastics he was going through to try and get into a place that is basically, it's that whole kind of like saber-toothed tiger anxiety, fight, flight, freeze or fawn. And it's too much for them. And if I could go back to those years ago when I was told, I would have stood in my power back then and told them, you either, we need to work on like an hour a day or not, because they can't. I found that the schools quite often would want him to go, you can do an hour on Monday, you can do 2 hours Tuesday, 3 hours Wednesday, then a full day Thursday, Friday, back to it the next week. And you're like, that's not how this works. They cannot, the kids' mental health is so much they can't do it, because Harley his came out before we got the autism diagnosis. They thought he had Crohn's disease because he would sit on the toilet for hours every morning. Nobody could use the bathroom. Nobody could do anything, because the poor boy was just having literal physical effects from the anxiety.
Jack went through a phase at primary school where every single Monday, he would have like really bad diarrhea. Yeah. By the Tuesday, he was fine.
Yeah.
So, and it was like for a whole half term, it took a whole half term to realise that there was a pattern.
Yeah.
And that actually what that pattern was, it was always on a Monday. So even on the Tuesday, he was fine, because obviously the first couple of weeks you have to keep him off for the 48 hours. And then I was like, dude, I can't keep just missing every Monday and Tuesday. Like, what? That's not me, that's him. What is that problem? And it ended up being that on a Monday he had forest school.
Oh.
And so the pattern was, he's just not an outdoorsy kid. He just really doesn't like forest school. But they don't necessarily have a conscious, and this was my point, like they don't necessarily consciously decide, I don't like this thing. They might not be able to verbalize that they have an emotion or whatever going on, but subconsciously their bodies are able to tell you. So, and I literally had this conversation this morning about keeping track of patterns.
Yes.
It might only come up, like for me, the initial reaction was, oh, he's got a bad stomach or whatever. And then again, okay. But then it's like 3 weeks, 4 weeks down the line, and you go, hang on a minute, this is every Monday. This is a bit odd. And because if you as a parent are tracking those patterns, I'm not saying write full-blown details and whatever. And the outside judgment of your external family or other parents, they're like, oh, she's a bit narcissistic, she's a bit controlling, she's a bit da, da, da. But if I'm not the one holding that pattern, knowing that that's what, and even to the point of knowing that his behavior would change
Yep.
when he was constipated, when he needed to go. And it's noticing those little patterns.
And we
And
notice
if
them,
you
and
need,
I think it's really, really important to track it, even if it's just a case of that in your diary you're doing like a little star or something, or just something that you can pick up, because you have to play detective as to what the bump might be. And I think the earlier you can pick up on that, actually the better, because if the longer it goes on, that list is going to get bigger of reasons why it's all too overwhelming.
and it could even be like, and I mean, something that I mentioned this morning to a friend, it could be, when you find that he's having a non-eating day on the days that they have PE. What happens on PE days? They're wearing a different uniform.
Yeah.
Is that he might not be able to go, oh, that tag is really, really annoying me, or that uniform doesn't feel comfortable and I don't feel quite right. But their way of telling you is they're not eating because there's something going on with their bodies, and people are like, well, even at my teenager, he can't always verbalize what that sensation is. But then as
No
a
adults
woman,
that can't. Adults just get
exactly,
angry.
and it's that sensation that your children are having on a regular basis, but they don't have the vocabulary to even attempt to let you understand that. So how they do that is through either not to eating, refusing to go to school, having a meltdown because they on a Sunday night because they know it's coming. Do you know what I mean? So
I've had
keeping
parents throughout the holidays where the start of the holidays was wonderful because the pressure's off and we're going to get time with our kids and it's wonderful. And we got to 3 weeks in and we've already then had kids starting to panic about back to school because they know that they've hit that. The first 3 weeks was great because they could relax, it was far away, and then they're already starting, because people will be like, oh, so and so's started doing this again, a behavior change, because it's a symptom of something else that is going on. And it can be really exhausting as a parent to try and find the answers to all these things, but you do it because your babies, you have to find that understanding of what it is. And also I think it's also really, really important to teach your kids that they are correct, their body isn't wrong in what they're being told. They are allowed to feel that way, it's correct, let's use that to understand ourselves.
And on that note, as a parent, know that you are also, and your child is also correct. Don't let the authority of a school tell you or make you feel that you're that parent, you're putting it on them, you're being the problem. There's nothing wrong with your child. And how do you have those conversations with the school? What would you recommend?
I've had them in several different ways over the years. In tears. It's emotional, it's a very, very hard thing to do. And I've always kind of treated it in the sense of treating it like I'm an employee at the school. So I can be kind and assertive. I don't have to be rude, but I can be assertive and I can ask for what my child needs and stand in the understanding that they are my child and I know them best, because at the end of the day, you literally birth them into the world. Everybody's always like, oh, well, kids need to be taught more at home. But then when the parents come in and say that they do know their children, they're then gaslit to believe that they don't in fact know their children as well as like a school or CAMS or something does. And for me, that is what I do in my coaching is help build you up so that you understand that you are allowed to stand and say that to the school.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because it's very, very scary. We are brought up in a society where you give in to authority figures, or you placate them, and etc., etc. And I did it for a good few years, up until Harley was about 11. And then I was like, this is ridiculous, because what I noticed, again, it's that tracking of the cycles. What I noticed again was that by the time they got round to my advice and finally implemented it, it worked. So I was like, hang on a minute, you need to be listening to me from the get-go, because I'm, and I would be very, I literally would come with solutions to the problems, because I think you can't expect all the teachers and everybody to have an exact answer for your kid. They've got enough going on with it. So if you're going to come and say, for instance, my son wouldn't go to the toilet all day at school and drink water, things like that. So at the time, the school didn't have a way for him to get out and go to the toilet without him having to verbally say so. So I went in and said, he needs a little card that he can raise in the air or bring and put on the desk in front of the teacher. And it says, toilet break, this is needed. I've still got it to this day.
Yeah.
That he didn't have to say anything. He was just too embarrassed. He didn't feel confident to talk, and he needed to do that. And so bring solutions if you have them, or even an inkling of a solution that you can then hash out with the school, and stick to your guns, because you would have come up with that solution, not like, oh, I've just come up with this. I'm sure you've been thinking about these things for a very long time. And it is about just learning to, I think in my case, I just accepted that I was going to be that mum. So I actually kind of lent into it.
Yeah.
Because I'm the mama bear, right? This is my kid you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, to add to that, from my perspective, I had the teachers, whatever. So actually, you will find that you come across teachers, and your certain problematic ones you might find are what they class as newly qualified teachers. So they're new to the system. They're trying to find their feet. They're new in the job. Their expectations, they're learning. Okay. But if you go in as a parent who's got potential solutions, and you're going to feed into their newbiness and their creativity and say, can we find a solution? I found these things work. They are going to take it on board. If you go in with, how dare you not understand, know what your job is, they're going to be like, you're a twat.
Yeah,
because
well,
they're
who wouldn't?
humans.
If I'm going to bring that energy, I'm going to match it. So, I think the other part of that would be, take somebody with you.
Yeah,
I think that's a really important part.
But yeah, and the other thing I'm going to say on the teachers front is that actually speaking to your child's individual teachers, and this is why they tend to work a lot easier at primary school, because you can have that one-on-one and a regular conversation and that communication. Teachers that will back you, and you will learn who they are and the ones to avoid.
In my son's case, his main supporter was actually the school nurse, because she was his safe place to go to. She was incredible. And she would actually come to our TAC meetings, because she knew him so very well, because she had the time. She didn't have to do all the grades and hit this, hit that, and the other.
Yeah.
So she was able to do that. He needed the teachers to be able to do that, but they can't, like you say, because they've got all these ridiculous asks on them.
Yeah.
Which, I'd love it if we could just go back to teachers educating and holding space for our kids to grow, because that's the point of it, right?
It's that holding space.
Yeah.
And I think, and that's a really, really good tip, actually. So if you've got any school refusal, or you're struggling with your neurodivergent, until they settle in and know and can trust themselves, go back to finding the person who is their safe person in school. Who do they feel safe with? Just say, who do you feel safe with?
Yeah. And if they don't know the answer to it, who do you usually end up around?
Yeah.
You know, sometimes you need to approach the question in a different way because they perhaps don't realise what they're doing.
Yeah, because that always surprised me when Jack was at his OT appointment and she said, what helps you feel safe or start in a settled position? And he was like, and it made me cry even now. My mum's hug. Yeah.
Yeah.
And she was like, okay. So, and then what we realized that with him, it's that act of having, and it's the same thing as why we have weighted blankets, weighted vests.
Pressure.
So by having, you know, and it's not just that connection, that the emotional connection with me, but it can also be that act of, so if they are struggling in school at primary, the school can put in place where they can have a weighted blanket, a weighted vest, or even, or if your kid, one of the things that I noticed they do, they carry their heavy backpack and they don't really like taking it off.
Yeah. Because
it's that regulation
safety
thing that's regulating their system.
Yeah. And it's playing detective, finding those things. And again, it's with the notes. I have got oodles and oodles of notes from over the years. You know, and always keep the paper trail through emails. Get everything that you do with the school down because it's important to know what is going on. And at each meeting, I would take somebody along with me to sort of take minutes, if you like, so that we know who was there.
And this is the thing, the schools should be doing that regardless.
They should
make sure that they are. And be when you say, I don't want to be that parent, but be that parent, actually give them a nudge and go, have you got the minutes from our meeting, please? Because I just wanted to go over, and actually because my own ADHD brain, I can't quite remember. Because the schools are, as much as it would annoy you, and yes, we have to understand, but they do have regulations, and they are by law, they have to not just deal with your children's disability, but if you have a disability, they have to take that on board as well.
When the odds are beating you